What up, y'all? Welcome to Try's World. I'm wearing my Sacramento Kings hat today. Sunday after the 4th of July. I'm watching the Mexico-England game, World Cup game in the background here, so you may see me darting back and forth, but I haven't done this in a while, and so I wanted to get back into it and talk about some things. Current events, markets, sports, you know, kind of the regular thing as probably usual. No really notes. I have some just current events just off the top of my head. Obviously the World Cup. Like I said, I literally have the World Cup on my other screen right next door to this screen. And so looking at that and doing this podcast as well. And so you may see me taking gaps, things of that nature in terms of attention. Yesterday was the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July to everyone. You know what? I'm going to minimize this even though that makes me a chump. Or I'll put it on this screen so it's not so distracting. You know what? I'm going to minimize the whole thing. But happy 4th of July to those who in the States here. I think most of my viewers are in the States, but I was celebrating with my family yesterday in Sacramento. We lit some fireworks, celebrated some birthdays. We combined a whole bunch of things all together, and it was fun and an awesome time to spend time with family and all that. So yeah, just a great time, good opportunity to spend time with family and do all that. And you know what, I'm gonna have it in the background because you know what, this is part of what I do. I got to keep up with some of these sports as well. So we drafted Darius Acuff. I went to the draft party with my nephew, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to the rookie classes, I'm not going to lie. But Darius is a special talent. I didn't think we were going to get him just because a red card just got issued, by the way. I didn't think we were going to get him against, it looks like England. Mexico's got a lot of momentum right now, and so England got up 2-1 early. Mexico scored a goal, and I don't know if you saw some of the replays, but Mexico literally was shooting off fireworks. It's in Mexico City, by the way. This game is like home court, which is, you know, I don't know if you've been keeping up, but and I don't mean to make this just a bro like podcast because I notice a lot of my viewers are men, maybe even young men, but I'm okay with that because I think there's a lot of stuff out there right now that young men are watching, and I think I probably have a different perspective on a lot of the topics that young men are drawn to. So, but I did notice that I do try to put some stuff in there, but I got to be me as well, and whoever that attracts. So, you know, again, thank you for the views, thank you for the support, and you know, but I do try to keep it authentic. I try to keep it real. And England just kicked a little penalty goal thing. Oh my gosh, the Mexican player just yelled in his ear. Hey man, I have a new appreciation for soccer. I don't know what this is doing for Americans out there, but I'm not gonna lie. I have not paid this much attention to soccer ever. So with the United States going so far in the Cup, with the events being held, with the emotions involved, some of the plot lines, and some of our injuries that got overturned, our red card that got overturned, probably with some help from the president. I'm not gonna lie, and maybe even a lot of help. But you know what? This is life. I mean, if it was, I don't know if, for a long time, soccer and FIFA, it was a world sport, and kind of the United States kind of had the luxury of not needing to be a part of it. And but for a long time, for example, the United States there was a whole article in the New York Times about how the United States tried to bring the World Cup during Clinton's era, and it didn't work, and it pissed everybody off. And I mean, we were so confident, the United States was so confident, they went and had a champagne party. They had a champagne party set up afterwards, and they didn't get it. So there's obviously some missing pieces. It's not always a bad thing to have friends in high places, and I think that's what happened here. Although the red card, I watched it. It was a pretty intense step on an ankle. I don't think it was on purpose. That'd be very hard to say. I don't know that player, his history, but I don't think he's a dirty player necessarily, and you see it all the time. So there's going to be disagreements, and if there's going to be some gray area, let's not take our best striker out. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty unfair. For some of these refs are out there, they're arguing with the players. I noticed the FIFA refs are a little bit more intense, and they really try to impose their will, which I don't like. I don't ever like, as someone who's watched sports for a long time, played sports in high school, even out in intramurals in college, things like that. I'm not a big fan of refs getting too involved, and there's whole EDM tracks made off of the intensity of some of the calls that refs are making. Red card, blah, 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 and they're really dishing it out to the players. And I see them arguing on the field with the players, So I think the FIFA refs hold a lot of power, from what I've noticed, and it's prone to abuse. Why not? Why didn't why couldn't it have been the case that the refs abused their power and gave them a red card? unjustifiably. So sometimes it is nice to have those relationships, and I'm glad we took it. I'm glad we were able to make that call and correct what I feel like was very gray. I mean, you can't just look at the gruesomeness of the actual injury or foul. You gotta take everything into context and intent and all this stuff. And I think it's really hard to say that, hey, he was going for that opposing player's ankle. So I'll say that. I think I spoke on EDC, and then I've taken a break for a little while, obviously from my podcasts and just catch up with work, family, a lot of other things. So and I've always said, if there's nothing, my goal isn't to be some internet superstar or something like that. If there's something to talk about, I'll try to talk about it, but I don't try to force the issue. Although I know continuity is important for viewership and keeping interest, things of that nature. So of course I don't want to lose people or any of the momentum that I've built, but again, I got to keep it real to myself, and it's got to make sense for not only my work, my personal life, but also everything else that I've got going on. So looks like we got a penalty kick. England's gonna kick it on the 59th minute. So, but anyhow, I'm jumping around here, but yeah, it's I have been watching Darius Acuff highlights. He did go 9 for 29 his first game. I think people are way too hard on him. I don't think that says much of anything. This is a penalty kick. I think England got it. Yeah, it's in Mexico. They're starting to throw stuff at the English players. Wow, down to 10 players. Okay, this literally is in Mexico City. But yeah, it's so tough kick. Must have been a foul or something, huh? But yeah, the fourth yesterday, Darius, he looking like a little AI. He's like big too, so I like the pick. I was surprised when the Kings announced the 6th overall pick and it wasn't Darius Acuff. The crowd cheered so loud, and I was pretty surprised too, because everybody that I talked to from the sales team with the Kings to my nephew and people who are like in the know, they were like, yeah, we want Darius. And so just by that alone, I was like, he's got so much attention, I'll be surprised if somebody doesn't pick him up before us. And so I made some predictions about the Kings last year, but I think I did get on and say, hey, with the injuries, it's not looking good, and just the direction of the Kings is not looking good. With the whole Zach LaVine, DeRozan thing just isn't working, and Sabonis also seems unhappy. So I think a lot of moves. It's just a lot of the pieces weren't fitting, and so a lot of the injuries. I mean, Sabonis was injured early, and that's what I'm seeing is Sabonis is easily injured, which is not good. He's coming off to me almost like an Anthony Davis type player now, which is not good. He can't seem to stay healthy for the life of him. So that obviously every time he goes down, there goes our season too. I mean, DeRozan can only do so much by himself, basically. And then LaVine, seeing that how bad our season was going, decided to get like hand surgery or something to make sure he fully healed. And so, but for the most part, I am an observer of the NBA, and I did make some pretty accurate predictions insofar as the Knicks taking it last year, OKC taking it the year before that. And yeah, I said some comments and some people who I know commented on the comment basically about Becky Hammon and how I think and how she was like, Brunson's an outlier. Okay, so in statistics, at least when I see an outlier, we're usually not including that in our data set. You got to look at the outlier and take other things into account. But typically it skews the data so bad, statisticians tend to discount an outlier as, hey, forget it. It doesn't make a nice looking graph, so we're just going to discount it as whatever, as an aberration, and forget about it. It'll never happen again. And again, that goes back to the disrespect, and I think that's what motivated Brunson to play so hard. It's just funny, though, because I wasn't the only one who saw the star power in Brunson. I think Barkley, pretty early on in the playoffs, said that he thinks the Knicks could go pretty far as well. And so, and obviously the Knicks organization themselves saw something in Brunson and built around Brunson. So this wasn't an accident that was like, oh, he's an aberration, so we're just gonna... No, the entire team was built around him. Villanova teammates were put around him. I mean, it was very intentful and purposeful to surround Brunson and make him the key piece of this championship run. So I really think that the people who are saying Brunson's too small, it's just, and especially coming from Becky Hammon, because she's a pretty small guard herself in the NBA. And so when she's talking about too small, she never could do it herself. So I get where she's coming from and things like that. And the fact is the game has changed too, to allow a more skillful player to play in the NBA. It's no longer like you just dump it into the big guy because the small guys can't get anywhere, offensively. It's a much more skillful game now than back in the day, where you just size and strength could rule everything. But by the way, Brunson's pretty strong. They call him Big Body Brunson for a reason. So he gets to his spots. He plays off 2 feet, and if folks don't know what that means, he's basically playing, if you look at it, and he even says it in some of his clips, he basically practices post moves and practices pivots, fakes off 2 feet, basically, because he can't always drive all the way to the basket. So it's just a very, obviously, I think ingenious way of looking at the game. And I think he will go down as a pretty great player. And, I said in one of my comments something about his greatness, and it was misconstrued as I think he's going to be like one of the GOATs of all time or something. I never said all that, but I just think that to say that he's basically got lucky and all this is just complete disrespect, and it's really for people who actually don't understand basketball, in my opinion. And so when I say, like, I don't think Becky really understands basketball, I don't think she does. It shows a gap in knowledge that she has as far as, basketball and how to overcome size through having strength, chemistry with your teammates, the right coaching. All of this stuff plays into it. And, Becky just couldn't put all the pieces together in her mind. And, I think that's a big reason why the Spurs thought she wasn't ready. To come out and just say that. I will say this. Let me give you an example. Draymond Green hates it when people say he's too small. He plays like 10 times harder when people say he's too small. So when you say, people are too small, you got to say, okay, in relation to what? And because Draymond was small in relation to a center. And that he basically plays center. Dennis Rodman is too small for a center. Okay, so these guys are like 6'7". Charles Barkley is 6'5". He plays power forward. He's undersized. And so to say that undersized simply won't work is false. Undersized, you're talking about overall, absolute, relative to your position. There's been plenty of players who are undersized. Mexico's kicking a penalty, and they got it. There's plenty of players who play big for their size. A lot of that at a certain size is desire. I don't think Jalen Brunson's probably I would think he's like 5'10", like actual height. And Charles Barkley's like 6'4". He's playing like he's 6'10" though. So you can literally grow another, 6 inches, let's just say, by heart and desire. Dennis Rodman was like 6'6", 6'7", and he rebounded. He was probably one of the best rebounders ever in the NBA at 6'6", 6'7". Not that 6'7", but I'm saying actual height 6'7". And 15, he could grab 15 rebounds in a game. He could grab 20 rebounds in a game. What is that about at that point? It's about desire. It's about boxing out. It's about finding a player when the ball goes up, putting a body on somebody. We ran drills like this with my varsity coach plenty of times. It's an actual drill, and it is about desire. There's no excuse for boxing out. That's why I cannot excuse what De'Aaron Fox did when I get that he doubled on Brunson to get the ball out of his hands. But if you watch the replay, OG actually has time to sit there and run to the ball and go like this, right behind De'Aaron Fox. And then when the shot goes up, so it's like he runs closer to De'Aaron, unbeknownst to De'Aaron. And De'Aaron just assumes that the play's over. So he doesn't even look behind him to see how close OG Anunoby is on that Game 4 play where the Knicks basically tipped it in. So had Fox simply boxed him out, that would have been game. 2-2 going into San Antonio. Completely different series. It could have been. And instead he missed the box out. And this is what Sacramento fans had to put up with all the years that Fox was in Sacramento. Him giving up on things and just being used to losing. I think he's one of those guys that losing is okay for him. It's not the end of the world. You just go back and have another chance. And to me, that's a loser's mentality. Every game should count, every second should count. You're not going to get your youth again. So you got to really take advantage of your opportunities. So when people say you can't take the Sacramento out of De'Aaron, again, I've been saying it in some of my other clips, watching sports and things like that. So although I haven't been doing podcasts, I'm still, sharing my views on sports and things like that on the clips that I share. But I just think, De'Aaron is, he's I hate to say it, but he's a loser, man. He didn't win in Sacramento. Good players, think about it. Wemby's so good, he attracts players to him. LeBron's so good, he attracted players to him. Although he ended up going with Dwayne. But my point is, even Dwayne, you have to be somewhat good to attract LeBron, and Dwayne was able to do that, along with Chris Bosh. Okay, so, and that will always be a fault for LeBron, but even on the Lakers, AD, and LeBron. So, I really do think the players have a lot to do with it as much as the GM and things like that. But, I just think Sacramento tends to spoil their players and their stars. And we don't ask a lot. Many times especially after the scare of Sacramento Kings leaving the city, we don't ask for a lot. And we really do spoil the players. And so, it's just funny because one of the people, again, I know the person, and they're commenting on a comment that I put on this national Bleacher Report, right? Everybody reads it, right? And I know the guy, and so I'm like, why don't you just call me? But my point is not to call anybody out, but it's I'm not a Lakers fan, and the comment was, okay, you're like a New York Knicks fan now because I can appreciate good basketball, even though I made the same call, and I didn't get as much shit for it. I made the same call 2 years ago for Shea, and nobody was talking smack about me like that. Okay, so pay attention. That's what I'm saying. I put this stuff out for a reason. I timestamp it for a reason. So pay attention, y'all. But don't get on my case about it, It's tough being a Sacramento Kings fan, and so all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're putting on a Knicks shirt, you sound like a Knicks fan now, you're not a Kings fan. I'm like, that's crazy. It's rich coming from people. That's the thing too, and I have nothing against it, but I don't give people stuff for liking another team and stuff like especially our rival. If you like the Lakers, for example, or you like the Dodgers, I got nothing to get. I'm gonna give you crap for it because you're in Sacramento, just like I did in my clips, when the A's were playing the Dodgers, I'm cheering for the A's right now because they're in Sacramento. I can't sit here and say I'm a big time A's fan. I've followed the Giants mainly. But since the A's are in Sacramento, I'm going to cheer for the A's. And the people who are in Sacramento, in the A Stadium, and especially if you're local, they got to realize, they wouldn't be watching the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Angels, and Mike Trout, and all of them if the A's did not temporarily move here. And so it's thanks to that move that we're able to get some MLB love and even have our city considered as an MLB city in the future. So we're going to put in a bid for that. I think Mayor Kevin McCarty has already put in a bid for that, and he said he's very serious, and I don't doubt him. Look at the stuff he's been bringing through, X Games and stuff like that, right? I mean, I've been getting comments from my friends dang, Sacramento's starting to get a lot of cool events, right? I usually have to go to the Bay to get some of these events. Guess what? The Bay has come out to Sacramento. This is what I'm trying to tell people. I know so many people that have made that move from the Bay to Sacramento, and so you're getting a lot of Bay Area people with Bay Area jobs in Sacramento. This has been going on since Silicon Valley started blowing up. Okay, Sacramento, I think, is almost an extension of the Bay in many ways. But don't get it twisted. Sacramento's still its own thing, okay, and deserves its own teams and things like that. So, but I've been getting a lot of comments Sacramento's starting to get a lot of cool stuff, a lot of love. We got Cranked Out recently, which is big. We got Subtronics, we got Cascade that came out here, and I just love it because I feel I'll be honest, I think DJ Diesel coming out here and him being a GM at Sacramento State brought a lot of attention to Sacramento as far as entertainment, and he's been able to bring a lot of cool acts to Sacramento State, let alone concerts and raves he's been able to bring out, so I mean, I think and just in general, like I said, I mean, if people are coming from the Bay and living out here, they're when artists come out here, they're going to realize, hey, there's a real market out here. Slander was here last October, and they sold out the place, and they've been selling out the place. Unfortunately, they're not coming back this October. Something big must be going on in October. Give thanks or something, because nobody's coming to Sac. But the point is, yeah, I mean, we're getting a lot cooler stuff in Sac. There's a soccer team. There's been a soccer team, but it's new to me because I haven't been in Sac. I haven't lived in Sac for many years. I returned to Sac, a few years ago. So I lived in the Bay, lived in LA, lived in the East Coast, lived in the Midwest, lived in the South, and now I'm back in my hometown basically. And it's new. It's almost a brand new city. So in my view, and so the people, still down on Sac. It's your loss. I mean, it's we're getting a lot of cool stuff, and the A's are a part of it, and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of reasons to be proud of Sacramento and cheer on your local teams and the local economy and things like that. If you own real estate here, if you know people who own real estate here, it's good for the real estate. You know why? Because people don't want to live in a city that's boring with nothing going on. Young people aren't going to want to move to a boring city. So if there's stuff going on, especially people from the Bay too, they're gonna want to, world-class entertainment, world-class sports teams, and I think that's how at least people of my generation should think about Sacramento and the teams in Sacramento. That's not always how I've thought about the teams. I've just been loyal to whatever's in Sac, but as I've gotten older, I realized, especially going to Notre Dame and things like that, I realized how big of an impact a sports franchise can have on a locality, bringing unity to the city, giving the city an identity, boosting the city's economy, things of that nature. So I like what's going on in Sacramento, again, and I will give people crap if they're cheering for another team. Even though I have friends, who cheer for teams from LA, who are literally the Kings, like arch rivals, so, but we've always been able to keep it civil, but yeah, I find it rich when people call out my loyalty when the folks who lived here, grew up here, can't even cheer for their own teams in their own locality. You know what I mean? So, I gotta check people when they're going way off base, just to keep, we gotta keep it real. If we're all gonna keep it real, we can keep it real. And like I said, the people who know me know, you can talk to me, you can call me, and I'll give you my number to talk to me too. And I've offered to grab beers with people who disagree with me. I don't, here's one right here, let's go out and grab a beer, talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we're all grown adults, man. Like, we don't need to be like airing our grievances out on the open internet and calling out each other's, like, getting hella like more personal for no reason. You know what I mean? So. But anyhow, I don't mind getting called out either. By the way, if you notice, I leave a lot of comments up that don't necessarily like make me look good. You know what I mean? Whether it's a racist comment, whether it's like a ridiculously off comment. Like, I posted a thing of Shohei, of me saying, "Hey Shohei," it's like a meme thing, right? And this guy's obviously living under a rock, and he goes, "Oh," and he's like taking it real serious, because I'm like, man, Shohei didn't respond to me, and I said, "What's up?" to him, and he's like way far away. I wouldn't expect him to say what's up to me. So I'm like, "Hey Shohei," and then I zoom out, showing how, kind of how far I am, and the guy didn't get it. And he's obviously living under a rock, because he totally, like, so I let him know that. I posted a Jiffy, and then he responds with clown. I leave it all up there just to like, not because of anything else, but because, I'm not sensitive when it comes to like talking about topics like that, especially like if you keep it high level, if you keep it focused on the topics at hand. Once you start getting personal and digging a little deeper, like into my loyalties, into my teams, and start calling out stuff that most other people may not know, then it's kind of like, if I know you, you can talk to me. If I don't know you and you're just a troll, I'll likely, I found it a better use of my time to just ignore like trolls. There's so many people who seem to have way too much time on they just sit there and troll. All day. It's like, from an account that's obviously not real, that's designed to just cause havoc and chaos, So, but yeah, other things that's on my mind. I wrote some stuff down, but I can't find it. I'm sure I'll find it eventually. But I'm like I said, I'm starting to get back in the swing of things. I practiced the DJ set. I posted it just because I feel like, I like people to know like what my music taste is, how I think about music. I do like kind of the impromptu nature of DJing. I don't like practicing sets. I don't like unless somebody's gonna pay me for like a concert or like a rave or like an actual like structured set. I get why you need to set up your set list the night before. If I'm a producer, I'm going to have, obviously, my signature songs in there, but there's no harm in, like, mixing in other songs. I've seen other DJs do that. So, a part of, like, DJing, when you think of DJing, is a part of rave culture. So, rave culture started as a way to escape society at large. So, it was a lot of, like, LGBTQ colored folks who, I think in the Midwest, basically would gather in these warehouses, and these DJs, many times again colored DJs, would mix on the turntables and just play whatever. They didn't care about like copyright or whatever. They just were mixing things so it would sound cool, and they added dance music, and it eventually got to producing, and the producing part changed it up completely. But literally, house music the name house is from the Midwest, and it's from a name of an actual warehouse. Okay, so, and again, it was like, the DJs in there, I think the spirit of it wasn't to like sit there and like build a set and like, have these like well-produced concerts, which I think it's a luxury. I love those as well. But when I'm DJing, I try to like embody that spirit, or tap into that spirit. Or at least that's what I imagine when I'm DJing. Because I imagine it from a dance angle too, a breakdancing angle or a breaking angle. I imagine it from that angle and how I can vibe to the beat, things of that nature. So, so I've seen a lot of complaints online from established DJs, from commercial DJs, basically getting paid very decent money, that hey, the sets sound the same. And then the rebuttal is, well, part of it is my production team. I don't want to change it up on my production team too much. My understanding though is once you sync it up to the song, the production team can kind of match it. They may not know what songs are coming next, but once the song comes on, they can start matching the pyrotechnics or the effects to that song. And so, I mean, I don't have a big problem with it. I did notice, like, Subtronics, for example. I listened to his Coachella set, and then I listened to his EDC set, and I realized he changed up a ton. And shame on me, I didn't think that much was going to be changed, so I missed his EDC set. I caught him in Sacramento because I figured I'd see him in Sacramento. Same thing with Zed. I left his set early to go to Peekaboo because I figured I'd catch him in the Bay. Probably I should have stayed because I'm realizing like the EDC sets are completely different. They're just I went to the very last EDC where they have basically both weekends combined. I don't think they're ever going to have that large of a crowd at EDC again because it was insane. So the artists know this, and so they put a lot of time into like practicing their sets. Aoki mentioned he spent months like producing or setting up for his set, and the prospect of 2 weekends, he was almost like, that just means I'm gonna have to like bust my ass, extra hard now, because he's like, I put so much work into just that one weekend, and I could tell. And I think, I watched Avicii's Netflix documentary, and in it mentioned Ultra as this festival to introduce music, and that's how Avicii was discovered. They didn't even bring up EDC, which was a shocker to me because I did watch the sets at Ultra, some of them, but the sets that I saw at EDC, it was bringing heat, just as much heat as far as like new music, new remixes, new mashups, new IDs. So I was like pleasantly surprised by the amount of new music that was introduced at EDC. And so I think that part is completely missed or underestimated by the people who go there, because when you read on the forums about people going to EDC, like nobody's talking about, man, I can't wait to see what, new set Subtronics is going to come out with, or live singer, because a lot of these, it takes a lot to, I think, bring on their live singers. And so, or bring on a collab. But since they're all there for the weekend, like, Elenium showed up to a lot of sets, which I still, I appreciate it. But for some reason in my mind, I'm thinking like, if you're going to show up, that he's going to jump on the decks and that he's going to introduce his songs and at least like try to mix in and out of his songs. But I realized like after the fact, that probably takes a lot of work. So I noticed, at least in the replays, the DJ's just showing up, and the home DJ or the person who's bringing on the guests is just sitting on the deck still. And all the guest DJs doing instead of going up there and like cheering on his or her own song. Many times it's his own song, which I find that to be less, it seems to be like less of a reason to do that than to bring, like, I can see why you'd bring like a singer. Okay, so Subtronics brought Oliver Tree. He's not going to bring, he's not going to always bring Oliver Tree unless it's a really big festival. Rest in peace, Oliver Tree. But he, and that's another reason why I'm bummed I didn't watch Subtronics at EDC, because that was one of, I think, Oliver Tree's one of his last live performances. But like Zed brought out Knock 2. I think Armin, he might have brought out, I don't know if he did or not, because it was such an early set, his closing set. But they'll sometimes bring out singers as well. Like Cascade brought out Meet Again, the actual singer for that. I keep forgetting her name, but he actually brought out that live singer. And he's not going to do that, like he had a set in Sacramento. He's not going to bring out that live singer. So they put more time, more money, and more effort into their sets at EDC because they know so many damn people are going to be there. And so that part is completely underestimated. Completely. I mean, nobody even talks about it, and I just found that to be like, that blew me away. And even after the fact, I didn't really appreciate it until I like thought about it, and I was like, wow, that set was really crazy, especially like when I watched it on the replays and stuff like that. I'm like, dang, like I may never see that good of a set from that DJ again, or that customized to like that environment. The Vegas environment is completely different than any other local environment. The festival environment is completely different. So vibes immaculate. The fact that they customize their music so much, and the fact that so many DJs are there and they're competing for your attention, just makes them throw down so much harder, in my opinion. So, they seem to like doubly appreciate the fact that they're on main stage and pull in the massive crowds, so that's just a side observation I noticed about EDC. And but I did a practice, like I said, I did a practice set again, and I shared my philosophy on it. I still need to step it up as far as producing and stuff like that, but I got to keep it fun. I know I have limited time as far as like with DJing and with music in general and stuff like that, so I have to keep it fun for myself, and I find DJing to be fun, and thinking of combinations that people don't typically think of. Like, I think I mixed Malpi with How to Fly by ISO, and I just never heard that combination before, and it somehow worked because the lyrics actually start rhyming. They were rhyming. I didn't realize that. Maybe it played in the back of my head somewhere, but it wasn't even on purpose. But that's the beauty of it, right? So you bring out new combinations, and maybe that'll be my next mashup, a remix mashup, where I'll add some of my own flavor to it or something like that. So just having fun with it, like I said. I mean, and it, my nieces and nephews were going to Subtronics with me, and just in case we needed some entertainment for afters, I could hold that down, and that's what I ended up doing. So I'm glad I practiced a little bit, because I literally forgot the buttons. If you see me on my live set, I'm like, what are the buttons? And that's real. Like, use it or lose it. So that's the other reason why I want to keep DJing, because I spent a lot of time. I realize, like, especially like after especially after I'm like trying to like teach it to anybody, to like someone who just started, I'm realizing how much I know, and if I don't continue to practice it, I will forget it. And so I also realized I did spend quite a bit of time practicing and getting to where I'm at, and it takes a certain amount of maintenance to keep that level of skill or performance or understanding of the decks, things like that. So at any time, I really do want to be able to jump on the decks and be able to play a set. But in order to do that, you got to keep things fresh a little bit. And the music's always changing. That's what makes the moment is always changing, day by day. The feelings are always changing. Now we got the World Cup going on. We just had the Olympics. That's why I had that Alyssa Liu song mixed into my live set. But I haven't added music in months, So, but especially after I see them live, then I'll have a better appreciation for the music, what gets people moving and what gets people vibing, and for what reason. And so, especially when I see an artist live, after I see the artist live, I'll add their music to a DJ set, because I'll be able to literally imagine, like, visualize how the crowd may react, So yeah, I got a little bit into that. As far as like business and markets, we've seen a big run up in the market, led by certain sectors, things of that nature. And I've always been a proponent of indexing. I mean, it's just I've always been a proponent of indexing. I mean, because it essentially, especially in the S&P 500 index, because it'll buy essentially the largest companies by capitalization. And so as a proxy, you'll buy into the most influential companies of your time, and it updates it too at a low cost. So I am such a big fan of it, and anybody who's followed that advice has done very well. Obviously me as an active manager, I'm trying to do better than that, so, but that doesn't mean I think the index is a bad index or anything else like that. But by its very nature, it's going to buy into the largest and most influential companies of the day. Okay, so small caps have done really well this year. Let's see what else. International stocks have done really well this year. Some certain international markets. Obviously, you talk about, when you're talking about themes, it's the companies that have been doing well the past 2, 3, 4 years haven't done as well this year. Okay, so there's some change in leadership as far as where the returns are coming from. And so the point is, though, to stay invested. I don't recommend investing in individual securities unless you're researching them and you have time, things of that nature, and you understand them. And again, I would really test yourself before you go with a smaller portfolio, a test portfolio, or a paper portfolio, things of that nature. So same themes. Nothing different, except the market's been, very strong. And, I think that, and I've been saying this, I think there's also, though, room for caution. There's things that may be unjustifiably up. Things like, companies, things of that nature, that could be way up for no reason, right? Or overvalued and you don't know. Okay, so just because somebody, or you hear a friend, or you see yourself that, hey, things are hot, it may or may not mean anything. And so when I say that, the market has done well, that's more of an observation. that's not a forecast into, hey, will the market continue to do well? As a passive investor, which this really is what my whole podcast is about, you shouldn't worry about the ups and downs of the market. You shouldn't need to forecast. You should continuously contribute to that plan. If you're investing actively, though, and you've done your research, this isn't the right podcast for that, just to be just to be transparent. It's not, I mean, there's investment principles that you can learn and pick up. I just say, England just won 3-2. Mexico put up a heck of a fight, but they just called game. But yeah, it's a tricky game. I just recommend folks index, and yeah, I mean, I just recommend people index. That's the best way to put it. But I would evaluate performance over the long run, but I've been saying this for the past few years already. So yeah, I mean, not a very exciting podcast for that. Yeah, I would say there's a lot of material you can go out and self-educate as far as that's concerned, or if you don't know accounting, to learn accounting, to try to learn accounting. So if you're passively indexing, continue to do that. If you're continue to contribute to your plan with the long time, with money that you can invest for the long run, and contribute the same percentage of your salary every interval. So, and that's what I've been preaching to folks who, may not have the resources to have a personal money manager, or even if they do, they may have money on their own still outside of their main money manager. Okay, so, but yeah, this isn't, that would just be good, solid advice in general, and it's just not, I don't want people to give people the wrong impression that I'm trying to make a market call or anything else like that. It's just, that's something you would say whether the market's up, whether it's down, or, anything else like that. So, not much to say, except things seem to have, as far as the Iran situation, it's just going to keep, just seems to be going back and forth, but we seem to be, I don't know what progress was really made. I think because we don't have physical possession of their uranium, because that would take boots on the ground to do, and now it's kind of like the administration sort of saying that's not even that important, when at one point it was supposedly the sole focus of the whole thing. That's how you ensure you shut down their uranium program. But now it's more, or the nuclear program, Iran's nuclear program. But now it's more like, let's sit and watch. Let's keep, and let's bomb, I guess, every time we see that they're building back the arsenal, which one would think we were doing anyway, But without diplomacy, we're finding out the pinch point of the Strait of Hormuz is easily shut down by Iran. So if we're not very precise with why we're shutting down or why we're bombing Iran, they're just going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, or if obviously they don't want their nuclear program to be taken away, but what we destroyed, according to this administration, was all their military capability. But again, it's not certain that really had an effect on their nuclear program, and I think it's dawning on the administration that that's going to be harder to shut down than they thought, because they literally need boots on the ground to go get this uranium. They don't know where it is. It's deep in the country somewhere, hidden. They're not going to just leave it out. And so it's still sitting around somewhere. In the meantime, I guess, to claim victory, the United States could say, hey, we took out your military, we took out Iran's navy, and things like that. But on the flip side, Iran could say, well, we shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and we can keep doing that. And so that continues to close, it continues to open. That's what's going on the geopolitical front. But for the most part, I think the market is realizing this is probably the best we're going to get. We're not going to get this unconditional surrender. It's just going to be this is where it's at, So it's kind of a crummy situation, and it's uncertain what gains we got from it. That's the best way to say it. From my understanding, from people who are really watching this with skeptical eyes, not just people in the administration who's just itching for war, but people who are looking at this and are prompted on the war and who are watching it from the opposition. They seem to see we have no strategy, which is scary. There is no strategy. We're just out there doing whatever, and it could be making the situation better. It could be making it worse. I guess the market has rallied, so it seems like I don't think it has anything to do with the geopolitical situation at this point, because it just seems to be at a stalemate. But since it doesn't seem to be this all-out war that's taking out people and weakening each other, basically, to a large magnitude. It just seems to be at a stalemate since the market's, just continuing to rally based on that. And so that's the other reason why I haven't really updated this podcast, is because that sort of crisis moment seems to be over. I almost am hesitant to say that, because it seems to be an unfolding crisis all the time for some reason. with this administration. I hate to say it, but it's true. It just seems to be like shit hitting the fan every day, But after a while, the market just seems to get used to it, and it's going to ultimately track based on how companies are doing, how the earnings are doing. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I don't have much more on mine except, I got to see Shohei play. He is a hell of a specimen. He went 0 for 5, but if anybody watched the World Series, they'd realize, there are many times, on the Dodgers run, people wouldn't pitch to him. It's he's such a good hitter, and pitcher. And he was supposed to pitch the game that I watched, but they ended up nixing it for whatever. But yeah, an all-time great. Maybe will go down as one of the greatest, or if not the greatest, baseball player, just because of his dual talent as a hitter and a pitcher. So just to see him go out there and just to see him approach the game, before the pitches, he would sit there and act like he was in the batter's box, swinging at the pitches. I don't know how many players really do that, but he, I think, visualizes it. He still got, by the way, contact on 3 balls. And Shohei getting contact, you just never know when that's going to go. So every time he got contact, I was like, because I am cheering for the A's, like I said, even though I'm not this diehard A's fan. And I'm cheering for them mainly because they're in Sacramento right now. And I'll cheer for another MLB team. Hopefully when Sacramento gets one, but, I might cheer for the Giants from afar, But anybody who's in the city, I'm going to cheer for. So that's the best way to say it. And I was glad to see that they were saying that this might be, one of Shohei's only stops in Sacramento. So I thought it was rare, and I'm glad I got to see him. And even though he struck out a few times, he did get contact, and everybody kind of gasped when he did. But yeah, it's just I guess I do wish that I saw him smack the ball, even though it would have went against the A's. But the A's were up by so much. Hey, what's a homer at that point from Shohei? But he didn't get a good chance at it. That should say something about the A's, too. Last year, they would have got swept. And so they're a lot better this year, I think. So looking forward to what they're going to do for the rest of the season. And they were able to do that without Soderstrom or Rooker. And Rooker's injured, I guess, for the rest of the season. So really unfortunate. It's going to be tough without Rooker. He's a good dude. And he's a good baseball player. So we'll see what happens at this point. But, other than that, I'm going to probably wrap it up. But in general, now that I've gone to EDC, I feel like I've gone to the pinnacle, as far as dance festivals and things like that. I don't think it can get any bigger than EDC as far as dance music. So I think there are other ones, Tomorrowland is another one, but I think EDC literally is the biggest. And next year they're going to split it in 2. So I don't think it's going to be as big as the one I went to. So I got to see EDC in its classic form before it changed. So on its 30th year anniversary and a lot of classics. So I'll probably talk about that for a while. I have so many videos I just posted every now and then that kind of brings me back to that moment. But I have a lot of content from that weekend. And a lot of content in general that I just don't always post. But appreciate y'all tuning in. I think I'm going to wrap it up. This one, I do have a lot of things to talk about. I'm not going in any, organized fashion. And I took so much time to, for personal stuff, work, things like that there's been a lot of topics that I'm probably going to have to, I'm probably going to want to speak on and just haven't gotten a chance to. Political in nature or not, but nothing off the top. But I did want to keep this going again because I think it's helpful, like I said, to people who are managing their own money as well, and culturally as well, just things that's on my mind and where things are going and all of that. I do have a take on these claims of election fraud that have been debunked over and over and over again. I think are concerning. I don't think I'm concerned in the same way that the media has it portrayed. I think I'm more concerned in that it almost seems like the whole election fraud thing is based off of this sense of I can do whatever I want, I can say whatever I want, however I want, and to whoever I want, and deliver it in whatever manner that I want, and it's going to happen. It is a very concerning mentality, and I don't, know where that comes from. I have my suspicions that it's deeply rooted in our, some of the ugly parts of America's history, and it rears its ugly head in different forms. I think this administration, and then we've gotten used to packaging that up in nice euphemisms and nice little packages, but it's happened so often now, and I've seen it explicitly happen, that I have to be suspicious. I have to be a little skeptical when I keep hearing these election fraud claims, like from Spencer Pratt, just because he lost to, Karen Bass and another candidate who's not Spencer Pratt. who is a white male. I mean, I really hate to say it like that, but it seems like there's a whining, cry foul, pinch whine, steal whatever you can, take whatever you can, because we don't like the result, and we as in the white majority, and we should all, and when I say white majority, I know that white people aren't all the same. I don't think this administration really appreciates that. There's this big pressure from this administration that, and he always says that if you're white, basically, you should vote Republican with me. You should vote the same way. We should all vote the same way. And there just seems to be a lot of pressure for this group mentality, even though, and he really thinks that's his calling card, and it's worked. I mean, in the past, it seems like so many times. I don't think in the way that he actually thinks it works, but he seems to think it works, and that's why he continues to use it. It's not ineffective, but it's starting to lose steam. It's starting to lose a lot of steam. I think people are starting to see through it, unfortunately for him. I don't think he sees it, and even if he does, there's nothing he can do about it, because he's dug himself such a deep hole with this brand, with this identity, with basically identity politics and affinity politics. Christian, white, male, create this coalition that he thinks is like solid. But then we're finding out, and this happened to the KKK as well. These are not very good people, right? So I think what tends to bring down these type of organizations is we see how cruel they are. We see how absolutely disgusting they are to women, to anybody else that doesn't look like them. They're violent. That's the recurring theme. They do terrible, nasty things that's counter to what they purport to represent. And so this is why white supremacy has not worked, because it's inherently, I think, an intolerant mindset. It's a hateful mindset. And when you have that much hate, you're bound to do crazy things. January 6th was a crazy thing. The fact that 1,600 people were essentially pardoned, and then some of them recommitted crimes such as pedophilia. These are the supporters that Trump pardoned. And so you almost have to think like people are sick of that. That's pretty disgusting if you think about that. And so that's what I don't think this administration quite appreciates. And so that's why you got J.D. Vance going in there like trying to reinvent himself now. Talk about his values in this long old book, and we know he's a little shapeshifter. Everything as a justification for cheating, right? And I'm seeing the comments. Like, I make comments, I see who's commenting back. There was this plumber, I think as a handyman in Sacramento, close to where I live, and he was calling me an idiot. So I look at his profile, and I only now respond to actual real profiles, because there's so many fake profiles. And this dude's like this handyman. I've never heard of him, right? I know a lot of people in Sacramento. I don't know this guy, so I'm like, and he's a white guy, calling me stupid. And so I call him out, and he deletes his comments, and I don't hear from him again, but it's just like, these are the folks that are representing the right now. And I see him, I literally see him, and I don't know who the hell they are. They're just, to me, and especially that guy, I called him out, and I was like, dude, you're just an angry dude. You're not doing well. You're angry, and so you're hitting people and hurting people who may or may not be doing better than you, but they work 20 times as hard, or they're more skilled, and they earned what they got, okay? And it's this mentality that, and it's because, Trump was given everything he has. It's this mentality that because I've been here, because I'm, a certain color, I deserve this. I'm entitled to it. It's this entitlement mentality, And that's what I've noticed from the comments that I'm getting that are in support of the right. And by the way, I say right because I always get hit with, you're this flaming Democrat. Since I was in the Midwest, by the way, and I told people I'm from California, people automatically just assume that. And so, now I go on the offense and I hit the right before anybody even calls me a libtard. I'm saying this, it's a Republican thing. I have to adapt to the environment. And if I always get hit with this flaming Democrat, I'm going to say this crazy Republican, before I'm even called a crazy Democrat. So there's no room for moderation anymore, unfortunately. So, it is what it is. It's an adaptation. I feel like politics have changed. The society has changed. But we can't just have people who I know and I grew up with, I know who's supporting the right, who never tried in school, did poorly, put very little effort into everything, by the way. Never involved, never helped around the school, and now they're angry. And these are the people I keep seeing that are posting over and over about the flag, about the American flag, and how patriotic they are, and how they are American. Okay? It's a problem. And it's not a problem that I feel like can be solved by saying, hey, I know you didn't try all your life, and I know you're not doing well because you didn't put very much work into anything you've ever done, and you don't work very hard, and you're entitled. But hey, if you vote for me, I'll make your life better. It's a disease. It's this disease that even though I didn't earn it, I can take it. Even though I don't deserve it, I can take it. And I can blame other people who don't look like me. And maybe by doing that, I can somehow take something that I don't deserve. That's very unfair. And that's why everybody's looking at the rule of law and trying to ignore it. That's why everybody's looking at any rules and trying to break it. We cannot have a society like that. We cannot reward behavior like that. And I think it's coming from the right, unfortunately. Now, I don't like some of the things coming from the left as far as ideas about society, about taxation, about a lot of things. Fiscally, fiscal responsibility. There's a lot the left needs to work on too, a lot. And when I call out bigotry, that's coming from both sides. I see it from both sides. So we do have a lot to work on, but I think most people would say, if you're against out and out racism and bigotry and white supremacy, if you're against it, I think most of the people that are against it, at least I find to be, many times they identify as Democrat, or they can identify, that's usually what I see. That's usually what I see. I have to say it like it is. I know a lot of people, and I don't hate on any of them, but I have to call it out like I see it, Not to say that people on the right are inherently this or that. That's not true at all. I know plenty of people who are Republicans who are not racist, So I'm not saying that, but if you're going to speak out against racism, if you're going to fight against racism, not just not be racist yourself and have black friends or Mexican friends or something like that, if you're going to speak out against racism and actually fight against racism, I find that many times the more outspoken ones and people who are willing to fight are on the left. I don't know why that is. But again, that doesn't mean there's not people on the left that are very much, I just feel like if I talk to folks on the left about it, they may be more willing to change. Like if I call out somebody and I say, you espouse democratic values, yet you do this, I see that many times they're more willing to change. More willing to say, I didn't even know that. Versus on the right, I call someone out, it's reverse racism, actually. They get defensive, So, but like I said, I think there's a lot of room to improve on both sides of the political aisle. I really do. And if you look at my threads, you'll see I call out both sides. So it's just I tend to get hit really hard if I say anything remotely anti-racist. I get hit really bad by the right. I get attacked by the right many times. So part of this podcast is speaking on topics that I care about. Whether it makes a difference or not, I don't know. But it's worth a try. And like I said, I do appreciate people tuning in if they're still tuning in and keeping up with stuff. But hopefully some of this is helpful. If it's not, at least hopefully some of it was entertaining. But anyhow, I'm going to probably shut it down now. This was a little longer, like I said, because it's been a while. And hopefully it won't take as long next time. But, I'm not going to force through a podcast either. So appreciate it, y'all.